Hey guys, welcome back. Another DogBone podcast here. I'm going to get right into it. This is a question from our training library. Training libraries get access to a different email. This is from a guy that I've gotten several messages from. I think it's a good one to read. I could have probably just answered it to him, but I think there's a lot of stuff in this that probably has applicable value to everyone that's listening, I would guess. So we'll get right into it. It's a bit of a. I read it, and I was gonna answer it back just by email, but then I thought, I think I'm gonna do a podcast with this one. But my fear with it, or my second thought on it, was, God, I just sound like a broken record. I feel like I've answered this a whole bunch of times, but obviously, if the question keeps coming up, it's worth answering again, and probably maybe I have. I'm sure I have answered it in lots of places, but it doesn't mean that necessarily that every one of those places gets listened to, heard, read, because I think on my end, I lose track of how many different places there are that people get information from, and we're trying to share to them all. So it just had me kind of thinking about it and realizing, yeah, it's probably worth answering it. And I'm sure somewhere in this podcast I've talked about this before, but we're also at like a couple hundred episodes now. And I think about the podcasts I listen to, and I realize I don't listen to them all. And so is it easy to miss? Absolutely. And so I'm glad this person reached out to me via the training library. I'll read his question and then I'll give you my thoughts on it. So it says, "Hi, Jeremy. I've gone back and forth and had hard focus on heeling on lead. And it's getting better, especially in our backyard and familiar places. We are still struggling with new locations. He just pulls on the leash the whole time, doesn't listen well. We really have a big problem if we take him off leash at a new location, a lake or an open park, or even our in-laws with a big open yard. The problem is with recall. It's to the point where if we go to places, I'm worried he'll run into the road and just not listen. I understand the distractions are really great, but I also want to be able to take him places and let him off leash so he can explore and play. I just can't trust him with recall at all. My question is, what should I be working on besides heel, which we are still working on, to help with recall? ? I'll even bring treats sometimes to the places to help him come back to me, and it doesn't always work. Just looking for some drills or something we should do more at home. I will say at home he listens much better, not perfect, but much better. I'm almost to the point I want to take him anyway off leash, and I may have to use a collar, which I'm trying like hell to avoid. I'm not sure why our training isn't working when we get outside of the house." Okay. So here's a whole bunch of things here. So what I'm reading is you there's a couple things. Let's talk about the heeling, because I think it's two different concerns or questions. One is you're struggling with heeling. The other one is you're struggling with recall. You heel on lead well in your backyard and familiar places. You're struggling in new locations. That's completely to be expected. And if you look at anything that we talk about in any of our training, you'll understand this is a really, really basic thought that you need to understand. You get good at something in one spot, and then you move to another spot, and then another spot, and then another spot. And every time you move to the other spot, it's after you've gotten really good. So the key here is that the location doesn't create the issue, whether it be distractions or unfamiliarity or whatever the reason is. There's going to be reasons when you go to a new spot, the dog's going to struggle. What you can't have is this thought that it's the key is the behavior. The behavior has to become so ingrained in the dog that it becomes a habit. Like I do think that's what training is creating habits. Figure out a way to do something enough times, over and over and over. That's where repetition comes in, so that the dog understands what the next thing to do is. And that is it doesn't know that there's other things to do. I can tell you right now, you haven't done that. You haven't done that long enough. And then you look at the stuff that you are doing, and you're probably not quite doing it great while you're doing it. So you got to fix two things here. One is you need to do it longer and more consistently, but not bad. Like, I think part of the problem is I've gone back to hard focus on heeling and lead, and it's getting better, especially in our backyard and familiar places, but we're struggling with new locations. So here's the first thing is, if you're getting better in the familiar locations, but you're not great, you're not doing it good enough. So you need to do it more, but probably more importantly, you need to do it better. I think that this is something you guys have all heard me say a lot recently. And when I say recently, I mean like the last year. Don't do more, do less better. So I would say if you're struggling with something, heel work is easy. I'm going to put that out there. Recall, easy. I'm going to put it out there. Dog to stand still or sit still, easy. These are all very easy things. They can be hard if you don't do them right. They can be hard if you do them in a situation or an environment that is distracting. And distracting could be like in the middle of a circus or a park where there's all sorts of stuff going on, or it could be just in your front yard with Tweety birds flying around. Like that's a different level of distraction. Any distraction is hard. So you have to make the environment as sterile as possible, as clean and non-tempting as possible, and master it, which means you got to get good at whatever it is you're doing. So like I would say, I'll break this down even deeper into the heel work, where I would say to you, where are the struggles in the heel work? Because there's lots of different things you could say. Right now it's not great. Well, make it great. So how do you make it great? You figure out what's not great, which means, are the turns not good? Are your 180-degree turns not good? Because if they're not great, you can't do 90-degree turns. If your turns away from the dog aren't great, I would never think about turning into the dog. Like now I'm breaking it down into the steps of how I teach a dog to heel well. Is your timing good on your correction? When do you correct and why do you correct? If the dog takes a half a step out of position, I'm turning. I'm changing directions. If the dog starts to slow down and leg, I speed up. If the dog's going too fast, I turn around in 180. If the dog's going to go too fast, I slow down. All of these things are balance, finding balance in whatever it is we're doing with the dog. But all these things have to be done so well on your part. Now we're not going to pick on the dog because the dog's not good at this stuff because it's not natural. I want you to think about how's your training. Because if your training isn't great, don't expect your dog to be great. So how do you get it great? Well, you got to pay attention to the details. And without me seeing it, I guarantee you I could pick apart your heel work. Because we just got done with a workshop here. We had 15 different dogs and handlers. And every one of them had to make a lot of improvement to themselves first before their dogs started to do better with heel. Like we put a lot of attention on heel. You're a private library member, Kale, so go watch the private library stuff with Inside the Workshop. There's several breakout sessions that are just about heel work because we put such a big emphasis on it. It's where everything starts for me. It is probably my number one thing that I feel like I need to have with my dogs, because if I can't get it done right here at my side, I can't get it done out at a distance. So heel is just such an important thing. If you can't get good heel work, which 15 people came in with not very good heel work, they all left better. None of them were great. Some of them were greatly improved. Some of them were less improved because they were probably a little bit further ahead to begin with. And we have to have realistic understanding that you just don't change dogs dramatically in 3 days. But you can change people. And so that's probably, and at the very end of your thing here, you said, P.S. sorry I couldn't make the workshop this past weekend. Hopefully I'll catch you at the Waterfall Expo. I hope so too, but I'll tell you right now, that probably would have made a huge difference for you, because we probably would have been able to help you with some of the details that you're slipping on. I guarantee you the reason your dog's not healing well after as much work as you put in, first off, you need to put in more. Second off, it needs to be better. So I would challenge you to start paying attention to those details. That I just named a whole bunch of them. Don't try to do them all at once. Do one better than than you had been doing it, and then another. And timing is usually probably some of the most important. Ability or understanding how to read the dog and kind of read what it's going to do next. That's very important. Those are all things that come with some experience. More repetitions, the easier it is. And the more experience you have, the quicker it comes too. So I'll say this: I had a team of really good trainers here. I had 3 other guys that helped me out with this workshop, and myself and all 3 of them. So the 4 of us together. One of the things that I thought was with this particular group of attendees was maybe the most powerful and important, and we'll be sharing this in the training library eventually because we're going to be editing this season. But one of the things that I think stood out this year at the workshop, maybe more so than ever, was how quickly and easily you could recognize the difference when you put the dog in the hands of a different handler, and how quickly the dogs adjusted. And I think if you ask the people that were here, they would agree with that, because there were some that were just really struggling, similar to probably what you're going through. But put the dog in the hands, put the leash in the hands of someone that probably can read them better, has a little bit better timing, has better understanding of some of the important parts, where it would be body language and necessary ways to kind of get the dog to move the way we wanted it to move it. The correct ability to make a proper correction. When I say proper, it doesn't mean more, but it means appropriate, like the right level of correction, the right amount of praise and the right timing when the praise was given. Like those simple things, the group, myself and the other 3 guys, are pretty good at. And we had dogs that were pretty young. I would say the average dog here over the weekend was a year old. We had some as young as, I think we had a 14-week-old, and then we had a 6-month-old. The rest of them were right around a year to a year and a half. And we did have one that was 4. So I would say on average, if you averaged out the 15 dogs, we were probably hovering around a year to a year and a half old. And they didn't have a ton of experience, but they had a ton of ability to learn. Like they were just real young and willing, real biddable, really easy going as far as wanting to please. And we were able to find that really quickly with most of them. So your heel work issue, the answer is probably you more than your dog. So my challenge to you, and I obviously can't see it, so I can't pick it apart, but all the stuff that I just said, you got to look at that yourself. And that's the beauty of the training library, and that's the beauty of what we do here with our stuff, is I don't want to give you answers to the test. I want to give you the information so that you study it and learn it and then pass the test. So you'll have to dig into that. Now, your next question, which you kind of wrapped into your first question, which is not the same question, is we have a really big problem when we take them off leash and go to a new location. The lake, the open park, the in-laws, big yard. And the problem is with recall. That has nothing to do with heel. That has everything to do with, I do think a lot of it has to do with respect. But maybe it's just simply understanding, but I would venture to say it's probably more respect or lack of. And the next thing you say is, I understand the distractions are great, but I also want to take him places where he's off leash so he can play and explore and I can trust him to recall. Well, yeah, I would love to have that too, but I'd love to have a kid that can pass the ACT, but she's 5 years old right now. So I can't necessarily ask her to go take the ACT. If they're not prepared and they're not ready and we haven't gotten them set up for success with whatever it is our end goal aspirations are, that's not the kid's fault. It's not the dog's fault. So I will tell you this. I used this line a couple times at the workshop was, look, I'm not saying it's forever, but it's for now. And so if you have missed the window of time that you could catch your dog, I've got a couple in the backyard right now that I'm going to be starting with. They're 8 weeks old tomorrow, our litter of puppies. And so tomorrow the third one goes home and I'll be having the 2 males that I'm going to be keeping here for a while to train. And for the next, I'll be really focusing on recall stuff with them, not together and not as a group with my other dogs. I shouldn't say that. I will do it as a group with the other dogs. I will do it, but I'll also be doing it individually. And I'll be making a real point because right now they are not fast enough to run away from me. And they actually kind of like me and want to come with me. So I'm making a point now. Now you can't wind back the clock. You can't go back to this phase. You're past it. I'm going to take advantage of it. And by the time they get to the point where they're about 12 weeks, which is a month from now, and they decide that they can run away from me and they realize they can, I'm hoping that the recall that I've put in the next couple of weeks is strong enough to be overpowering that freedom that they kind of all of a sudden have. If not, I'll put a lead on them. And I'll work through the recall in more controlled environments until I can slowly get the result I want in an area that becomes a little bit more tempting, a little more distracting. So I'm going to break it down probably into a lot more steps that are shorter, smaller increments than what you've done. If you're working in your yard or somewhere controlled at home and getting okay results, again, you're not ready to go to the park. You're not ready to go to the lake. You're not ready to go to the in-laws' big yard. Because if you can't get them great at home, you can't even think about doing them in the areas that you know are going to be an issue. There's a lot of steps in between those two spots. And first off, you got to get it great at step one. And so we talked about this again. I like these workshops because they get my mind going again. For when I get connected with people that are struggling with some of the training stuff that's more, I'm going to call it basic, it's more foundational. When I'm not around that and I don't see that, I don't always, I take some things for granted and I just expect people to understand stuff because I understand it, or I think I understand it pretty well at this point. Well, it took a long time and many dogs and a lot of mistakes before I started to have the light bulb turn on. And I still get light bulb moments. So it's an ongoing thing. But what I see is when people come back here, I start talking this language again because I need to figure out ways for them to understand it, because I can't just talk at a higher level as far as like experience wise, because they might not recognize it. So I have to in those 3 days of workshop, we have to figure out how to take folks from a really beginning level, entry level type stuff to, by the time we're done, I kind of joke about it and I say in 3 days, we compress about a year's worth of work into people, not into the dogs, because the dogs can't take that. And we hit ceilings on every dog before the end of the day on Saturday. Like, it was very clear. We topped out where the dogs were at, but we can't wait months. We don't have that kind of time in a workshop. So we have to go past that, and we got to keep talking to the people, not so much the dogs. And inevitably, the dogs kind of do keep up, but not to the degree of like being able to say, yeah, we just accomplished all that stuff in 3 days. But the people, yeah, we forced a year's worth of thought and ideas and concepts into 3 days that they now go home and hopefully work on for the next 12 months, 10 months, whatever it takes. But one of the things we talked about throughout was, because as an example, we did like on Saturday, we did probably 3 breakout sessions. I think we do 4 or 5 all day, and 3 of them were kind of connected back to, if you want to boil it down to the basics, it was heel. Good heel work. And from the first breakout session to the second, from the second to the third, and even within the third, there and within the second and within the first, as a matter of fact, there was like probably three measurable progressions within each breakout session. Now, these breakout sessions happen in an hour. So in a matter of an hour with 4 people, we touched on basically 3 kind of steps. 1, 2, 3. And then we went to the second session and we went 1, 2, 3. And then we went to the third session and we went 1, 2, 3. And when you do those 3 sessions and you break them down into 3 kind of clear stepping stones, that's a total of 9 steps. Well, by the time we got to number 9, we were quite a ways from number 1. But you kept hearing us talk about things that we talked about in 1, 2, and 3, in 4, 5, and 6, and 7 and 8, even though we were at number 9. So the idea was, when do you move on to the next square is this thing that we talk about. Like, you're in square 1. When do you move on and go to square 2? Well, the answer is you don't. You take square 1 with you. You got to take them all with you. So for this recall work, you got to get square 1 to be like bulletproof. And then move to 2 with 1 in your pocket. And when you go to 3, you bring 1 and 2 in your pocket. And when I say it, like, I mean it kind of like literally in your pocket. Like, you got to have it. You got to have it there to use. It's a skill. And then what happens is you continue to sharpen it and develop it. And then pretty soon you got this whole, and another analogy I like to use is this chain. And every time you get something, you add a link to the chain. Well, if you're missing links, a chain does you no good. If you have sporadic links throughout, it really doesn't do you any good. And if you only got 2 or 3 links connected, that doesn't do you really that much good either, because you need more chain than that to get anything done. So you need to look at this as, I'm not saying it's forever, but it's for now until you can get it right. Which means, you're going to have to give up the free runs at the park. You're going to have to give up the free run. Because let's fast forward here. So you say you're working on this stuff to help with recall. You bring treats, okay? So I don't remember the last video I said, when all else fails, bring a fanny pack. Because you'll never find that. Now, I do say it, and I'm going to do it with these puppies. We're posting a series right now with Rain and Millie, where I used kibble. So I'm not saying don't use kibble. I'm not saying don't be a treat trainer. I don't care. We talked about this at the workshop too. I don't identify as any of them. So I know that's a thing now. People want to identify as stuff. I'm not identifying as any of that stuff. I'll use kibble if I need it, and I'll wean it out as soon as possible. But this idea of you're struggling with this dog to get them to come to you. So now the answer is, I'll just bring some treats. I can't help you. That's an audible. That's a punt that I'm not familiar with. Then you say, you're looking for some drills to be doing more at home. Reverse heel. Get perfect at reverse heel. Everywhere in all the locations. You pick up, then from there you can turn it into, without the formal reverse heel, you can let the dog drift in a certain spot and then recall them to you. Turn and walk away from them. Get them coming back to you. Turn this into Pavlov ringing the bell, that as soon as it hears and I'd be curious to hear your commands. I'd be curious to hear, are you recalling to a whistle? Are you recalling to a word? Are you saying here? Are you saying come? Are you saying get over here? Are you saying up, 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 up? Are you saying da, 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 da? Are you saying, what are you doing? Because I bet you're doing a whole bunch of them and none of them are working. So you continue, I bet you, to throw stuff at the wall and see if it sticks. Can't do it that way. Got to get good at one way, because it's not fair to the dog to have them think, I don't know what the hell you want. You're just you're probably making a lot of noise. And the dog's going, noise doesn't mean much to me right now. I'd rather do this. It's way more distracting and tempting, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So when I go back down here, it's almost to the point where I want to take him off leash anyway. Okay, how is that going to work? You can't get him to listen to you on leash. But you're so frustrated, you're to the point where you're just about to take him off leash anyway. I may have to use the collar, he says. You're trying like hell to avoid it. I got news for you. I got news for everybody listening. The collar isn't magic. If you can't get the dog to listen without the collar, he ain't going to listen with the collar. Putting a collar on it, putting pressure on the dog is not going to necessarily... The collar, and I can't speak to the collar. You'll have to talk to a collar person if you want to go that route. But I can tell you right now, just putting a collar on a dog and putting pressure to their neck won't fix recall in distracting areas. It won't, it, because training has to happen. You have to train the dog to do the behavior. And so if you, now, if you use drills like reverse heel, if you progressionally get to the point where that works, where the dog, you back up and the dog comes to you, and then you start doing it without the lead, and then you start doing it in areas, and you get it to, it's good. Like, I'd question if you could do it in a hallway. Can you get the dog to come back and forth in the hallway? Because if you can do that, good. Go to a room with nothing else in it. And when you can get it really good in that room, go to a little bit bigger room with nothing else in it. And then for me, I'd go to my porch, because my porch has a railing that has there's all the distractions of outside, except you just can't get off the porch. So I'd get really good there. And then from there, I'd go to the other side of the porch. I'd just go on the other side of the railing. So the dog could go in the yard if it wanted to, but it's so focused on me because of what I've done in the hallway, in the room, in the other room, in the porch. By the time I take the next step, square one to square two to square three to square four, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are in my pocket. And when I go to square 5, the dog is so dialed in on me, and that the distractions, I can tell they don't matter. They're not going to matter to this dog. Focus is on me. Now, what will that take? Well, that'll take you doing it right. It'll take you doing it well for a while. It'll take you not allowing all the other stuff to happen. You can't work on something and have it go good for a little bit and then have it go bad a lot of it, because the little bit doesn't stick. The lot of it does. It's like a majority rules. If you have the dog listen the minority of the time, whatever the majority of the time is, which is not listening, will be the more prominent behavior. That's what's going to stick out. So you have to, I think the biggest question here is not teach me the drills. Go to the foundation video. Go to the foundation video. It's 3.5 hours long. Heel, sit and stay, stand still if you got a pointy dog, but we'll do sit and stay with our retrievers. Recall, come with me. That's 3.5 hours. And I don't know if we cover a whole lot more than that. I think we might do place training in the foundation video. It might be in the puppy video though. But watch the puppy video too, because you got access to that. As a library member, you got access to all of it. If you are doing those drills and doing them really well, you've got a couple squares in your pocket to start thinking about getting a little bit more environmentally challenging. But if you're to the point where you just say, you know what, I'm to the point where I just want to take them off leash anyway, and I might put them on a collar and go down to the dog park or the lake and see how it goes, then you are going into it with, like, you're trying to put a puzzle together. It's a 100-piece puzzle. You got 13 pieces. How are you ever going to put that puzzle together? It won't work. You got to have all the pieces before you start putting them in place. So, I hope this makes sense to you, because I can tell the number of questions that we've bounced back and forth with I know you want to do it. I can sense that. I know you want to do it. I think I can sense that you're really struggling with how to do it, which means you got to pay more attention to you and what you're doing. And I would set up a camera. Like, if I were you, I'd set up my phone. I'd put it on a little tripod or prop it up somehow. And I'd just do my heel work session in front of that camera. And don't pay attention to the camera. Just focus on the dog. And then watch it back. Because another thing that we talked about, and I think it got through pretty well to a lot of people at this year's workshop, was there. It's a participation sport. You have to do it. You got to be the one. So when we break into small groups, there's 4 people in a group. And when your turn is up, you're under the microscope. We're working on you and your dog specifically. And that can be challenging and that can be stressful. And then when you're done, you get to kind of take a break. You get to kind of catch your breath. And I always warn people, don't take a break. Catch your breath. Let your dog catch its breath. But you will learn more watching other people, if you pay attention, than you than you potentially will yourself in your window of time that you're performing with the dog. And the reason I say it is because you just see it from a different perspective. I do. When I watch videos that the guys have filmed of me training, I shake my head so many times going, I missed that. I did not see that. Look at that. How did I not see that? Because it becomes very, very clear. And I'm critical. I'm real critical of myself. But I also understand that when you're on the other end of the leash, even when someone's not watching you, when someone's watching you, it's even magnified. You don't even realize what happened. You're just doing it. And sometimes it clicks and sometimes you feel it. And that's what we're looking for, is those little light bulb moments. But when you get to watch someone else, I saw it countless times this weekend where the person that was working with their dog, something would happen. And I noticed the 3 people that were watching, they caught it before the person that was actually in the moment with their dog. And I could tell by their body language. I could see the way they responded. And I said, you saw it, right? Yep, I saw it. Okay, remember that. Because when you're on the other end of that leash and you're holding on to it, you're missing that. You're not seeing it because your perspective is different. Everything you see and feel is different when you're the one working the dog. So I would put a camera up, a video camera, and I would just film yourself for a session, and don't make it long. Make it 5 minutes or less and do some heel work and see how it goes. And if it goes really well, I would say pay attention to the details, because what went well different that time than the other times that you say it's getting better but not great. Because I bet you took it a lot more serious when all of a sudden there's a camera on you, if it went good. Because I've seen this happen. I'll watch the people, and when I'm watching them, the dog does really good and they do really well. It's because they're paying attention to such detail. They're so dialed in. They're so focused that they're doing everything right, and they're working at it, and they've got enough repetition now, and they've got enough feel for it, and it just works. And then all of a sudden I'm not watching them, and they become really lazy and sloppy, and it looks like crap. And I call them out for it, and they go, oh yeah, I just wasn't even paying attention. And they go back to that old habit. Well, if you let the dog do the wrong thing 80% of the time, and you focus and let the dog do the right thing 20% of the time, what's going to stick? 80%. That part is going to be more dominant. That's going to win. There's the majority. You got to tip the scales. And you don't want it to be 60-40. It's not realistic to say it's 100%. You never 100%, but you want to be as close to it as possible, which requires you to really focus and put the work in. So, Kale, I'm going to send you a message here to give you heads up. I think Ben will probably get this live here pretty quickly. I appreciate your support of being a training library member. I might sound like I'm coming down a little bit on you. It's tough love. That's all it is. I do. I had some of the best moments this last, and I'm going to do probably a podcast just about the workshop, but I had some of the best moments where I had to get really serious with people. Because normally it just depends on the people, it depends on the dogs, and it depends on the situation. But getting on somebody usually isn't my best tactic. But there have been some pretty powerful moments where I've realized you got to be tough. You got to toughen up to take it, and I got to be tough and deliver it. And when I say tough, it doesn't mean abusive. It doesn't mean mean. It means firm. It means serious. Because it is serious. Because if you don't do it, you'll get walked on. Dogs are so smart, and some of them are so personality-wise ready to take the reins if you give them to them, that sometimes you have to get the person to realize it, and they don't. Because all they want to do is sometimes love their way through it. And you can't do that. And you can't beat your way through it either. There's a balance there. Everything is, I don't know how many times I said balance in this podcast. Not enough. Because that's what you need with all this stuff that we're doing. So thank you guys for listening. I'm going to give us over to Ben. I also kind of am curious if you would do me a favor. I know some of you have done it and I appreciate it, but if you would leave a review, and if you would leave a review more specifically to this episode for me, if you notice anything audio wise, I was just not happy with our audio for a while. And we recently got a few different items that are hopefully going to make for better audio. Some of it came through some experience that I had with an episode that we did recently, and I think Ben's going to have it live here. By the time you listen to this, it'll probably be live. But we did a video or a podcast with Gun Dog It Yourself, Nick Adair from Gun Dog It Yourself. We did it at Pheasant Fest, and we did it actually at the show, and I could not believe that we could record a podcast, because I'm sitting here in a quiet place trying to have good audio, and we just never could get it the way I wanted it to be. And we did it with these headset mic things that he had, and I picked his brain a little bit on it afterwards, and I'm hoping we got into some of that equipment, and I'm hoping that it improves the quality. So if you would do me a favor, it'd be a huge favor if you'd leave us a rating and a comment regarding the audio if you did notice any change. I'm hoping you to say yes. So appreciate your guys' support. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll continue to do this for you.